This conference will now be recorded.
My name is Mason Weber, and I'm an implementation specialist here at TimeClock Plus. And today we are just going to go over the basic manager functions and how to approve employees' times, give them schedules if needed, add segments to employees, and so on. So this is what we call the TCP manager portal. This is where you'll put in your user ID and password, but since the LDAP is going to be tied into this, all you have to do is put in your LDAP credentials. So the same credentials that you log in with the network. So I'm going to go ahead and put in mine. We'll go ahead and log in. Here's the dashboard. This is where all the critical information is going to be stored. So depending on the dashboard, you'll be able to see any required approvals, some missed punches that need to be approved, anybody who's approaching overtime, any pending time off requests. So if any of your employees request time off, as well as any conflicting segments and some other fun stuff like birthdays or anniversaries, just in case you want to utilize those options. We'll first start over at the Hours tab and Individual Hours. Here's where you'll see a list of your employees. Right now we have all of them just because I didn't restrict any, but yours will be a little bit less than this depending on the location that you're at, and the employees will be a little bit less than this. If we select an employee, here's where we can select a start and stop date range to see the employee's segments, so what they clocked in and clocked out as. If we want to add a segment, we can click this green add button here. And we can enter the dates for the time in, along with the actual time that the time was in, and the time out, along with able to select any job code that the employee has. Here's where we can add the note for the segment that's added to keep record. And say you're adding more than one day consecutively to the employee, and it's that same time length, you can drop this down and select multiple days in a row. If for some reason an employee clocks in and says, hey, I forgot to clock in, can you clock me in or put in my time in? We can select this individual as clocked in. And that way it's just asking for a time in and not a time out. So if we make it 9 a.m. and we save, it'll put that segment here. And in the time out segment, it'll say clocked in, because we just gave the employee a time in segment. So now that they're able to go throughout their shift and clock out as normal. Along with adding time in the individual hours, here you can also do manager approvals. Some of you will be restricted to only approve time. Some of you will be restricted just to be able to add the segments. So your layout here might be a little bit different than what you see now. But if you want to approve any time, any segments for a manager, we can go ahead and select these manager boxes individually here. We can click the M checkbox to select any segments all at once for that employee within these date ranges that are selected. Or we can go to Resolve Period, Manager Approval, select Approve, and Apply, and it will select all those. And again, depending on what role you have within the company, the manager approval or other approval may or may not be there. This E column is for the employee approvals, so they're able to actually go on their side, which I'll show you later on in the video, and they can approve their segments as well. And you'll be able to see, yeah, my employee approved their segments, or no, they didn't. And if maybe they have all their segments approved except for one, maybe something's wrong with that. And to get with your employee just to double check. If there's any other exceptions that need to be approved, if you hover over this, there typically will be a red dot instead of a blue. And if you hover over, you can see what exceptions need to be approved before payroll has to run payroll. We also have the schedules. So here's where you can see your employees' schedules. Currently, our test employee does not have a schedule, but you'll be able to see their scheduled segments here. And we also have the accruals tab. So this is where you can see how much time off an employee has to request leave. Next, we have the group hours. This is where you can select the start and stop date and view all of the segments that any of your employees have all at the same time instead of having to see them individually. So here I can see all the employees I have access to. And again, the manager approval can be done from here as well. So if we click this, it'll approve the segments for just this employee. We can individually click the checkboxes as well. We can select this top M here at the very top of your first employee to select all manager approvals on this page. So if you selected this, we would only be approving for page 1, and then we'd have to go to page 2 and approve it. Or if you do resolve period and do the manager approval and approve and apply, it will do it for all pages if you have multiple pages. Here we also have the employee filter. So this is where you can select, say, employee ID and do select, and we can select to, let's say we just want to see these 3 people. We can go ahead and select that and filter. And now those 3 people will show up. The reason why the third one's not showing up is because there's no clockable segments for that employee. So it will only show up if they have hours. And there's multiple ways to filter for the employees, and that can be done in individual hours, group hours, a lot of these other places, and reports, and it's a very useful tool. Next, we have the period export. So this would be exporting if you need to export any time for your employees and send it to payroll. This is where you can do it. There will be a preset filter for SSI FMS if need be. You don't need to do any changes here, just the start and stop date. If you need an employee filter, you could do that, and then just change this file if needed, or change this file to something that you could pertain to yourself and determine where that export was coming from. Next, we have schedules and employee. This is another place where you can see the employee's schedule. And say you want to create a schedule for that employee, you can select the employee and the date and do add. And there you can put in what they should be working and the time they should be working. We also have recurring schedules, which will be created here at the schedules recurring tab. Right now we just have a company default. It's saying that 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. So anybody that we give this company default recurring schedule will be given a Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. So if we went to the test employee and went to recurring schedules, we'd have to override the role settings and assign. We would select the start date that we want the recurring schedule to be from. select Use Recurring Schedule, and then select which recurring schedule you want to give that employee. There's some other views, just the daily schedules. It's a list of your employees and what they're working on a daily basis, a weekly basis. And right now we have no employees with schedules, so that's why there's no information here. Next, we have the Employee tab. And here's where we can see the employee information. If we select the Jobs tab, this is where we can see what jobs those employees are able to clock in and clock out of, along with their leave. And all of these other overtime, these advanced, these are all pretty much set. This will be changed by HR or payroll. These are tabs that you would not have to touch. Next, we have reports. This is where you can run reports for all of your employees that you have. The regular ones that we see are complete payroll, payroll detail, and some exception summaries. So if say that before the payroll is processed, you want to run an exception summary to see who you need to do the manager approvals for or fix some hours for, this exception summary is very helpful. There's over 300 different reports, so I'm not going to go through every single one of them, obviously, but those are the main ones, and I would play around with the reports. There's a lot of different ones to get the information that you're needing. Next, we have tools and employee status. This is where you can see all of your employees and their current status, if they're clocked in, clocked out, on break. If they have a schedule and they didn't show up, you can see them in the absent tab. If they got the day off, you can see it via the on leave. And then if the employee has a cell phone number tied to their account, it will also show up here. And that way you can say, oh, I had an employee who didn't show up today. Here's an easy way to call in some of the other employees from this viewing area. The next would be the requests and request manager. This is where an employee's, if they entered a time off request, it would show up here. Let's go ahead and add one for the test employee. And to do that, you can select this green add button, or you can select the plus button for the date. We would select the employee. So I'm going to select the test employee. We can put in the start time. So let's say that they were supposed to be here at 8. And then we can select the template of a half day or a full day. So let's just say the test employee did a half day. And we would want to select the leave code that they'd be using. So let's just say they used half day of sick. We can put it in the description, doctor's appointment, and save. This employee does not have any accrual balances, so that's why it's giving us this error saying this request entry will result in a negative balance. Are you sure you want to save this request? We'll do okay. So now this is pending. When adding it, you can approve it, but also if you right click the segment, you can approve or deny the request. Along with if it was a manager or a teacher, you can manage the substitute assignments to who the substitute is being assigned to. Some other useful tools is the attendance monitor and audit log. So if you're wanting to know who changed or made any edits for certain employees, you can see that in the audit log. We currently don't have any for now just because there hasn't been any. You would want to select the hours audit log, my apologies. And now you can say, okay, for test employee, they clocked in and it was added by this user. And if there was any notes tied to it, you can select this and it will show any notes. Another useful option is the envelope up in the top right-hand corner. This is where you can send messages to your employees. So if you go ahead and select that and do compose message, I would highly suggest always doing the individual messages. You don't want to do a company bulletin because it will send it to all the employees that you have. But here you can do select recipients. We'll go ahead and give the test employee a message, say, meet me after shift. We can make a start and stop date. And then we want to make it mark as read. So then that way when the employee reads it, every time that they clock in and clock up or clock in and clock out, it doesn't show up. They can mark it as read. So then that way it will disappear. So let's go ahead and send it to that employee. And those are some basic functions of the manager side. Now I'm going to show you where your employees would be clocking in and clocking out and requesting leave. So if we log out from here, we have the web clock down here. So if they're using the computer, this is where they would use this link that shows up. The mobile phone would look exactly like this. So I'm going to go ahead and do log in a dashboard for employee number 1, which is our test employee. And I don't believe we have him set up the same as the other ones. But if we went to go view messages, here it will say, meet me after shift. Also, it should be showing up when they're clocking in and clocking out, which I will show you in a second. And if they have the availability to request time off, there will be a requests, and then it would be the same exact view that we saw in the request manager where they can just do a plus button on the date that they want to add their time off request for, or select the green add button to request time off. The same exact thing. I just believe this employee doesn't have access to request time off. So we'll go ahead and log off. And we'll go ahead and clock in. So right now it's giving me this error message. You do not have access to perform clock operations. This is because the clock operations have been restricted for the web clock to only be able to clock in and out via the local IP address, and that's why I'm receiving this error. But if I did not receive this error, the message that we sent the employee would show up. They can mark it as read, and then it would give them a confirmation saying, this employee, so test employee, you're clocking in at this time. Do you wish to continue? And you hit confirm, and they'll be clocked in. And those are the basic functions of the time clock manager and how the employee would be clocking in and out via the web clock. Thank you very much.